Good afternoon, Trump's family. Welcome back to my channel. Thank you for joining me. God bless each and every one of you. Let's just jump right in, folks. There's plenty of things to talk about. And something the mainstream media news is not talking about is the fact that a Coast Guard swimmer, who had rescued many people down here in Florida after the aftermath of Ian, came through and destroyed many parts of the coastal part of Southwest Florida, actually received a call from Biden thanking him for his courage in him going above and beyond and rescuing these people. Unfortunately, he's going to have to be let go. Why? Well, because he didn't take the Fauci out. That's why. No, that's no unvaccinated need apply. That is the motto of the Biden regime. Yes, you did a fantastic thing, but you cannot go out there and rescue people any longer cause you might have to. Oops. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable how the people in this nation are treated because they refuse to take it. Experimental jab that had no research behind it that led to many people to have all kinds of issues down the road. And here we have a service member who put his life on the line to go out into the waters to rescue people who needed rescuing, and now what is his repayment? Yeah, you're going to be fired. So let's dive into coming to it over here to Biden calls and thanks. Coast Guard swimmer for saving the lives in Florida hurricane. Seam hero will be kicked out in days for being unvaccinated. That's right. That is what his reward will be. The Biden administration is so incompetent they have no idea what they're doing. The article says Joe Biden personally called the Coast Guard swimmer, AST, to Zach Luzin for his heroism in saving an elderly couple and their dog last week off Fort Myers, Florida. Saving the dog too. That's a stand-up job by the Coast Guard, because it was the ATF or the FBI or any other agency, they would have shot the dog anyway, while conducting the rescue operations, one of two on the two of the islands off the coast of Fort Myers which were inaccessible except by boat or helicopter. Loesch and his crew went to work within minutes of arriving by hosting people out of the area onto their MH-60 Jayhawk helicopter, and delivering them to the Hertz Arena parking lot in Fort Myers. One of the houses they arrived had an older couple whose roof was torn off. They were stuck in the back bedroom because of the couch had been lifted up by the hurricane position in such a way they were unable to exit. The woman is disabled and use a specialized wheelchair tailored to her individual needs because of the inaccessibility. Loesch was forced to tear through the wall to gain access to the room. He was successful in retrieving the man and woman plus their dog. Loesch even went back to attach a hoist to the wheelchair in Khalid and himself out so the woman would be able to get around once they were evacuated. Well, the Bidet White House reported the call on a webpage on Friday, saying in part that Biden spoke to the Lieutenant Commander Christopher Hopper, an aviation survival technician second-class Zach was Loesch, to personally thank them for their heroic work that they and their Coast Guard colleagues had performed during the search and rescue operations in response to Hurricane 2, and the president thanked them for saving lives and asked for a report on the work that continued to rescue Floridians. He also asked them if they needed any additional support that they could provide to accelerate SysTech's successful rescue. They indicate they have gotten what they need to execute their vital mission. What the Biden team likely didn't realize is that Loesch is going to be discharged in a week or two for not being vaccinated. That's right, for not taking the vaccine. He is going to be put out, essentially being fired by the same person who would call them to thank him for rescuing people out of danger. The same corrupt government that we see that impose these human rights violations on our soldiers, and of course among many people across this country, forcing them to choose between their livelihood or taking this experimental jab. The sailor, this Coast Guard man, refused, and now his reward will be being fired. And the left joins tell us, how could you possibly be racist? If you claim to be anti-racist, the left, I'd say we're allies, we're anti-racist. But what they don't seem to get is that the definition of anti-racist isn't defined as being racist to white people in order to even the playing field. That's reverse racism, and it exists regardless of what leftwards will tell you immediately. As you mentioned, reverse racism, the NPCs react. Reverse racism doesn't really exist. They tell you my power dynamics, my new definition of racism, which justifies my ridiculous worldview. No, dummy, racism exists regardless of the group that it's directed at. And this is where the irony comes in. I mean, ironically enough, the anti-racist left has become the most racist group in America. I mean, at this point, I think it's very hard to argue against that. It seems as though the main woke policy proposal when it comes to tackling racism is taking things away from white people, letting white people suffer, making white people pay, attacking the concept and the idea of whiteness shaming, white people shaming white children and discriminating against them in various different ways. Whether it comes to college admissions, grants, you name it, the list goes on and on. Of course, how could I forget the hiring process? Like I said, tackling racism, with racism, how incredibly stupid. And here we go, Kamala Harris has bought into the woke anti-white doctrine, and she is getting absolutely slammed for this comment that she made just the other day. Let me show you guys exactly what's going on here. Alright, friends. So here's the context. Here's what Kamala Harris said in relation to disaster relief and the current emergency response going on in Florida with Hurricane Ian. She said, "It is our lowest income communities and our communities of color that are most impacted by these extreme conditions and impacted by issues that are not of their own making. And so we have to address this in a way that is about giving resources based on equity, understanding that we fight for equality, but we also need to fight for equity, understanding not everyone starts out at the same place. And if we want people to be in an equal place, sometimes we have to take into account those disparities. And do that work? Well, very habit, folks, every single left-wing woke buzzword you could possibly imagine all center. But what they mean by equity is discrimination against white people during natural disasters. White people should be neglected as a later priority solely based on the color of their skin, while people of color should be the absolute number one priority when it comes to response relief and everything related. That is an absolutely despicable stance to take. This is what people mean when they say that wokeism is discriminatory. I mean, could you imagine the feeling if you've lost everything, then you turn on the TV and you see the Vice President of the United States saying that? Well, you just aren't a priority because of the color of your skin. This is what has people so frankly piss off, the idea that underprivileged poor white people don't exist. At least they don't exist in the minds of liberal elitists? Well, surprise, there's more poor white people in the United States than there are of any other demographic. The percentage might be a little bit different, but in terms of sheer numbers of them, there's a whole lot more. And of course, I don't know this for a fact, which is based on logical thinking. I'm just gonna go out on a limb here and assume that the areas that are worst impacted by a natural disaster like this are rural areas where the homes aren't necessarily built in a way to withstand a hurricane. What immediately comes to mind is possibly trailer parks and trailer homes. And one thing I know for sure is that those communities are majority white folk. The idea that black people are disproportionately affected when it comes to a hurricane in Florida or natural disasters in general seems a little bit ridiculous, and I guess I'd have to see the studies. But even then, even if it was the case, the idea that the response or that funds should be used in a discriminatory fashion based on color of skin because of equity still isn't justified. It's still a disgusting concept. Here's a novel concept. Here's real anti-racism. How about nobody gets discriminated against? How about funds are used to help everyone? How about all of the communities that were negatively affected receive the funding that they need to rebuild regardless of race or class? How was that so difficult for left-boids to say they've taken this stance collectively are not deserving of hell? And considering the current economic situation in so many white working-class neighborhoods where industry has completely died or fentanyl overdoses and alcoholism is skyrocketing through the roof, where people are legitimately suffering poor, unable to afford basic necessities, the idea that these people should be neglected is so unethical. It's not even funny. It's actually crazy to even think that this stuff unironically comes out of these people's mouths. How could you say something like that and think that it's okay, and think that you're on the righteous side fighting for equality? Equity is not equality, it's the exact opposite. Democrats plan to fight discrimination with discrimination. And that's not me saying, that's not an assumption that I make, and that is literally verbatim, a direct quote from leftist woke thought leader and anti-racist or suppose an anti-racist and social justice activist Ibram X. Kendi. He literally said that, and we've covered that quote in a couple of videos in the past. The idea that these people are anti-racist is a complete farce. They are the real racists. A lot of people don't like that point. They say it's a political talking point. It's divisive. It's this, that and the other, but no, it's true. Just listen to them speak and you'll hear everything that you need to hear. I mean, for Pete's sakes, they call Donald Trump a racist every single day non-stop for 6 years, they're still doing it. Meanwhile, how many legitimately terrible statements in regards to race has come out of the mouths of Mr. Joe Biden himself? It's almost countless. And actually, here's another example. Just from this week alone, Nancy Pelosi slammed for remarks about immigrants needing to quote hick crops Pelosi. His comments were in apparent reference to Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, sending 50 illegal aliens to Martha's Vineyard earlier this month. I move that in rage. The political left quote right now the best thing that we can do for our economy is comprehensive immigration reform, Pelosi said. We have a shortage of workers in our country. And you see, even in Florida, some of the farmers and the growers saying, why are you shipping these immigrants up north? We need them to pick crops down here. Not only is that a despicable comment, essentially implying that illegal migrants should be used as cheap labor to the benefit of the American economy is a complete farce. But it's yet again another window into how the left thinks. Remember the infamous moment of Kelly Osbourne? I think it's Kelly Wright. The daughter's Kelly O. Anyways, it doesn't really matter. The Osbourne daughter on The View challenging Donald Trump's immigration policies, claiming he was going to clean your toilet. Donald Trump, it's the same damn thing. He's leftwards pretend that they're compassionate if they continue to enable every single system that leads to the suffering of people, and certainly to the suffering of illegal migrants, and minority communities claim that they're anti-racist, and that they're combating discrimination and racism, and then they turn around and act as veiled, discriminatory and racist as possible. These people are not the good guys. They certainly have a hero complex, and I guess they've somehow deluded themselves. They've convinced themselves that they're doing the right thing, and saving the world and saving the planet. But the reality history, their track record tells a very, very different story, to say the least. The despicable Democrats strike again, highlighted by another viral Kamala Harris gaffe. No wonder they keep her in the basement right next to Sleepy Joe every single time these people make a public appearance. It's a complete disaster. Alright, thanks for being here folks. Please receive a big hug from all of us. Let me know down below